My name is Miss Heidi, and I work for the Poudre River National Heritage Area. Today, we're going to be exploring a source together. Your teacher may pause this video at different points so that you have a chance to think, observe, and discover for yourself. You might be wondering, what is a source? A source is a person or item that can give us information. Today, we're going to be examining a primary source. That means this source can give us original information because it was created at a specific time in history, and it can help us understand how people lived or thought at that specific time in history when it was created. Today, we're going to be looking at a historic map, a map from the past. Maps can tell us a lot of information, but the information they can give us depends on what kind of map they are. There are many different types of maps. Today, we're going to be looking at a reference map. These maps include things like roads, cities, boundaries, and landscape features like mountains and rivers. Take a moment to think. What are some things that you think a reference map could tell us about the past in the time when it was created? Let's see if we learned some of those things today. Our map was created in 1820. That's over 200 years ago. It was created by an explorer named Stephen Long. You may have learned about him in our video about explorers with drip and drop. Let's look at the map. What things do you immediately notice, observe, or wonder? I observe that the map is long up and down instead of left to right. That's not common for a map. I observe the map is one color, black. And I notice at first glance, I have a really hard time orienting myself. That means figuring out where I am. And I wonder what all of these squiggly lines across the map are. Okay, so let's look closer. This is a regional map. That means it only shows us a part or a region of a whole. I can tell you that this is a part of what is today the United States. Most maps have a compass rose. That shows us which way north is. Does this map have a compass rose? No, it doesn't. But there is another way, another tool or clue from this map that we can use to figure out where we are. We can use the longitude and latitude lines along the edges of the map. Here, all the crisscross lines. Latitude lines run north and south, measuring the distance from the equator or the center mark of our globe. If we look along the left and right edges of our map, we will see the latitude lines. We will notice that this map stretches from 32 degrees north above the equator up to 46, but really 47 degrees north of the equator. That means this map stretches from about the middle of Montana down to the middle of New Mexico down here, to kind of give you an idea. Longitude lines mark our globe moving east and west from Greenwich, England. So we can see that this map right here says longitude west from Greenwich. So we know we're west. We have a flat traditional map from England. This map stretches from 104 degrees west to 92 degrees west. And if we look along the sides, we'll also notice some other things that can give us information. This says the Rocky Mountains. So we know that this edge of our map, this left edge, that's at 104, 105 degrees west, is about where the Rocky Mountains are in the United States. If we look at this side, we can see the side that is at 92 degrees. We'll notice it says Arkansas, Iowa's, that's Iowa, and Missouri. So that's the states that today exist on the right or the east side of our map. So we're roughly starting from Montana to New Mexico, the Rocky Mountains to Iowa, Missouri, and Arkansas. If you want, you can pause this video to get a sense of what that landscape looks on a map from today. If we look down at the bottom of the map, we're going to notice some other things that most maps have. Right here, we can notice the scale of miles. Most maps have a scale that tells us this distance on a map equals this distance in real life. So in our case, this distance, if we used a ruler to measure on a map, would equal 150 miles in real life. So that can tell us how big the landscape is here. This is the title of a map. Most maps have a title. It gives you a clue as to what the map is about. The title of this map is Country Drained by the Mississippi Western Section. That is a really helpful title. That tells us that all these squiggly lines represent rivers and that this is a map of all of the rivers that flow into the Mississippi River and then from there into the Atlantic Ocean. You might have heard some of the big rivers that are on this map, like the Arkansas River or the Platte River or the Missouri River. So this is a map of rivers. Why would people in the past want a map of rivers? Think of it this way. What do all humans need to survive? We need a lot of things, but one of the things that we need to survive is water. So if you want to explore and maybe even move like a pioneer or a settler into this land here, you're gonna need water. We need water to survive. The best and easiest way to find water is to be by a river. People have lived by rivers for thousands of years. It's a great source of water. So if you're moving across this landscape, it's really helpful to know where the rivers are, since you need the rivers to survive. If you're traveling across this map, it would also be really helpful to know where the rivers are because rivers are a great way to not get lost. If you're traveling and you're out in the prairie or out in the forest, it can be really confusing to think, oh my goodness, which way did I come from? But if you're following a river, you can follow the river one way, and then when you don't want to go that way anymore, you can turn around and you can follow the river back the way you came. So it's a really good tool. Following water is a really good tool for us to not get lost. Remember, this is long before there were cell phones, Google Maps, or anything like that. So the only tools you have to not get lost are your observation, your memory, and maps like this. Let's take a closer look at this map and some interesting things that we can learn from it. If we look at the very bottom, we're going to see drawn by S.H. Long. That's Stephen Long. That's the creator of our map. And he drew it for the expedition to the Rocky Mountains. Remember, this guy was in charge of leading an exploring expedition to the Rocky Mountains, and you can learn more about him in our video. Okay? This part right here is a little bit unusual for a map. This shows us the elevation as you go across the map from right to left. So remember, the Rocky Mountains are on this side of our map, and states like Iowa and Missouri are on this side of our map. You might notice the elevation goes a little bit up as you go across, and then it goes really up when you get to the mountains. So that shows us that the rivers and the water is all flowing this way across the country to the east. I want to show you some other things on this map that I observed. We're going to think about what these things that I noticed tell us about the past. You might notice that there are no boundary lines that show us where the states are on this map. Remember, this isn't necessarily a map of states, it's a map of rivers, but also most of this land, they are not states yet. In fact, not all of this land is even owned by the U.S. If you look right here, this says Spanish territory. That means this chunk of the map that's down here in New Mexico isn't even part of the United States yet. It's still part of the Spanish Empire. That tells us that this is before the United States really thought about this part of the landscape as part of them. It's important to remember that just because there aren't states here doesn't mean that there aren't people living here. Native Americans from many different tribes were living on this land long before, for thousands of years before this map was drawn. In fact, Mr. Long gives us clues about who is here. If we look down here at the map, we'll notice he's marked Cherokees. Cherokee is the name of a Native American tribe or nation. So we know that the Cherokee are in this part of the map. If we go up further on the map, he's marked Sioux Indians. So the Sioux people, as we call them, are living in this part of the map. In fact, he even marks a few villages that he knows of different Native American people that are living here. They might be Sioux or they may not be. Like this one, Omaha. Here's another village. These little triangles all mark villages. And you'll notice often they're right by a river because what do people need to survive? Water. Okay, so if we follow it over here, do you see any of those little triangles on this side of the map? I don't see any marks of that, but I do see Cheyennes. I know that's a tribe that lives in our area. And he leaves us a little note about how he observes that the people that live in this part of the landscape move across it. They're following bisons. They're plains people. They're out on the Great Plains and they're not living in set villages. They're following the animals from place to place. We can also notice something else when we're over here by that note. It says route of the exploring expedition westward. So if we see this really little dotted line with all these numbers on it that we can follow all the way back, that is the path that exploring expedition has taken. And these numbers are the dates when they got to certain spots. So if we look right here, 1 to July, they're right here on this map on the 1st and 2nd of July in 1820. So that's really helpful. That gives us a clue of where these explorers were at different points in history. This section right here is really special to me because this is the part where I live, right in Fort Collins, which is a part of the state of Colorado today. And you won't see my town marked on this map because it didn't exist, but the river that goes through my town is on this map. It's right here. On my map, it's called Poudre Creek. Today, it has a different name. It's called the Poudre River. So that gives us a clue that maybe some of the names that are on this map are different from the names that we use today. Some other examples is these mountains up here. On our map, they're called the Black Hills. Today, we call them the Laramie Range. So that's another example of a name that's changed. This is the same, Yellowstone River up in Yellowstone, Wyoming. But my favorite one on this map is this one. It's called Stinking Water River. Maybe if you've ever been by Yellowstone, you'll know why it's called Stinking Water River. Some of the names on our map are the same, like the Rocky Mountains that were here, or the North Fork or South Forks of the Platte River, Castle Rock. So those can give us some helpful clues about where we are on the map if some of the names are unfamiliar. And we already noticed that on this side of the map, there were Native American villages, but there's also cities like Missouriopolis, which is today Jefferson City, or Arcopolis, which today we call Little Rock. So if there are cities on this side of the map and less on this side of the map, that gives us a clue that even though there are people living on this side of the map, the people that drew the map aren't living over here. And that makes sense because Euro-Americans, settlers and colonists, moved from the east to the west across the United States. So it makes sense that they're over here on the east side of our map, but not over here on the west side of our map. These are some things that I noticed from the map, but there are so many other clues that this map can give us. And I'm curious what else you think this map might be able to tell us. You might spend some time looking closer. Notice what things you observe and think about what that makes you wonder. Notice words that you recognize, words that you don't recognize, marks that make sense, marks that might not make sense. Think about what you know from this part of history and ask this map What can you tell me that I might not already know? Thanks for exploring this map today. I hope you had fun.